In this short video, I want to explain what exactly processed foods mean and how to decide which options to choose more often and which ones to avoid. So processed foods refers to any food that has been changed from the natural state of the food. That includes foods that was simply cut or washed, heated, pasteurized, canned, cooked, frozen, dried, dehydrated, mixed, or packaged. So there's a lot of different options here, and the foods aren't truly unhealthy just because they're slightly processed. And that also includes foods that have added preservatives or nutrients, flavors, salts, sugars, or fats. So let's dive in. Now, healthy eating. Usually people think processed foods are bad, right? And there are a lot of processed foods options that are less nutritious. Some processed, though, are healthy. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the differences. So the types of processed foods. Now, the United Nations has a food group scale called the NOVA food classification, and it puts foods into 4 of these groups. All right, so group 1 are your unprocessed, your whole clean foods, or your minimally processed foods. Now, this group includes foods like fresh blueberries, roasted nuts, chopped vegetables, or any other foods that have slight changes. And these foods are prepared like this to be able to make them easier for you to access. It might include things that have been dried, frozen, refrigerated, filtered, fermented, or put in vacuum sealed packages, which is meant to preserve these natural foods because they will spoil faster in their natural state and allow you to eat them safely later. Now, group number 2 are your processed culinary ingredients. Obviously, these have been changed. This group contains options like your butter, oils, sugars, and salts. They're ingredients that come from nature, but they're slightly changed. They might have been pressed, refined, milled, or dried. They've gone through this process so that it makes it easier for you to use them in your kitchen. And these options are not supposed to be eaten alone. They're meant to be added to foods during your food preparation. Group number 3 are your processed foods. So notice the difference between this and group 4, which we'll talk about next. These include your canned fish, your fruits and your syrups, bottled vegetables, cheese, fresh bread, or any other options that were made with added salt, oil, sugar, or other things from groups 1 and 2. Most of these foods have 2 or 3 ingredients, not a whole bunch, but we want to look at what those ingredients are when we're making those choices. These are edible by themselves, but they can also be added to other dishes. This food in this group was processed to make it a little bit more stable to add to its qualities. Now, here is the kicker. Group number 4, I don't know where my photo went. Let's just go away. Group number 4 is your ultra-processed food and drink products. Now, as you can see here, these are your junk foods, right? This group contains foods that are typically the result of intensive manufacturing processes. These are the ones you really want to avoid or eliminate altogether. They are created from foods and additives. They don't relate much to group 1 foods at all. Like the other options, these foods include your sugars, your oils, your fats, and your salts, but they also have ingredients taken from other foods like your casein, lactose, gluten, whey, hydrogenated oils, protein isolate, maltodextrin, invert sugar, and high fructose corn syrup. These are the ones you want to avoid most of the time. Now, how can you choose better options? So to get the most out of your meals, you'll want to stick to foods that are not changed as much from their natural state. So think 1 ingredient foods are like your eggs, your vegetables, the foods that you find in the perimeter of your grocery store, right? Typically, the less processed it is, the better. But obviously, if you go in your frozen section, you're going to have frozen blueberries, frozen vegetables that are not, they've not had any much added except the processes of freezing them for later use. So there's a little bit of a difference besides, the package of the chips and the candies, right? Now, typically the less processed it is, the better it is. So some examples of processed foods that can actually add benefits to your meals include things like your whole grain or your whole wheat breads, pre-cut vegetables, low-fat milk, milks or juices with added vitamin D and calcium, your canned fruit stored in water or natural fruit juices, and maybe your breakfast cereals with added fiber. So these are the options I would say to look for more if you are going to choose the processed foods, and at the very least, eliminate or avoid the ones that are really high calorie, high fat foods, fast foods. These are going to be the ones we consider highly processed foods. So I hope this helps, and we'll see you in the next